sit outside in the car or how do I do it?
Hello?
Hello.
Hello. Good evening.
Good
Hello.
evening.
Hey,
How
Lola.
are you? It's just the two of us?
Yeah, it will be one-on-one. Lola, we're waiting for the host.
No, I know. Good to see you in good
Good
form.
to see you. Yeah, lovely. It's so nice to connect with you.
I thought it was going to be earlier in the day, and Ellen told me that it was going to be at 9. So it's good because at 3, I thought it was going to be at 3.
Yeah.
At 3, I couldn't connect, so it's good.
Yeah, it's free.
I didn't want to miss.
New York. It was free New York time because it's
Yeah.
initiated from America, so it's very cosmopolitan.
Yeah. Good. So how are you, Femke?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm fine. Yeah. How are you doing?
I'm okay. The kids are going to bed, so I'm still hearing shouts and screams.
Oh, I know what you mean. And my
Downstairs, it's like going nuts. they should be in the bed by 9, but
yeah. My only anxiety was what if my son wakes up and starts to cry, but my partner will attend to him. He promised, so he'll go up soon. Yeah, but so I think I heard your kid.
Yeah, because now Anna's screaming. Actually, I made it. They are calling my husband. Anyway, it should be
Oh,
okay.
so are you in Spain or Italy right now?
No, I'm in Italy at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
In Italy, yeah, it's terrible because it's a while that I haven't been to Spain since March last year. I went there for my last lessons.
Yeah.
Were in March last year, and then we never came back. And actually, when I came back, Italy was already in lockdown, so it was quite, yeah. Imagine. So I'm curious to listen to you.
Yeah.
I'm glad to, yeah.
Yeah, me too. I think thanks for coming, and I really hope to really. Hi, Peter.
Hi,
Hello.
Femke. Hi.
Hey, hi, Peter.
I'm Mariadza.
Yeah. Hello.
Hi.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Peter, I met with Lola. This is Lola. I met with her
You're
14
Lola?
years ago.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
And now all of a
Maria
sudden
Dolores.
we reconnected. Yeah, Maria Dolores. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so we reconnected, and it was really fun that we already met in another lifetime.
Yeah, in another, yeah, definitely.
An actual other lifetime or just much earlier in this lifetime?
Earlier in our
much
20s.
earlier.
Yeah, when we were fresh in our 20s.
3 kids ago for me.
The one for me.
Yeah.
Hi, Carolina.
Greetings, Carolina.
Hi.
Hello. Nice to meet you.
Where are you, Carolina?
I'm in Sweden.
Beautiful.
Ah.
Yes. Where are you guys?
Where are you, Peter?
San Francisco.
Ah, great. I'm in Italy, Tuscany.
Aha.
Oh, that sounds really
Lucca.
beautiful.
That
Oh,
sounds
look.
like-
You're welcome here.
Sounds great. Sounds great.
When everything goes, when everything ends up.
I'm close to Amsterdam. That's easier for
Yeah.
yeah, I'm close to Amsterdam. So it will be very international, I think, today.
Yeah.
UK
Good.
people and I don't know. Let's see. Oh, Jelle. Hey,
Hoi,
Jelle.
Femke.
Hoi.
Hello.
Goedenavond.
Greetings,
Wat leuk dat je
Jelle.
bent. Jelle, he gave a lecture on spiritual ecology and Sufism for us. And I heard it was incredibly interesting.
Who is us when you say for us?
We from Stop Ecocide, we organized 3 lectures on spiritual ecology, and Jelle did the last one. And I missed it because I was almost due with my pregnancy, but I heard it was very beautiful. I still regret that I missed it, Jelle.
Well, we can do it again.
Yeah, why not?
It's quite some time ago now.
Yeah, 3 years ago, huh?
Something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
So
So
I'm
where are
just
you, Jelle? Where
Sorry?
are you?
I'm in The Hague.
Ah, okay, you're in The Hague. Okay.
Yeah.
Hello,
Very.
Nanette, is that you?
it is me. Hi, sorry, I have to rename myself.
Okay, I'll find you in a second. It's Pete.
Hi, Peter.
Hi, Nanette.
Hello,
Lovely
Femke.
to see you.
See you. Yes, welcome.
How you doing?
Good, I'm well, thank you.
Good. You're in New York, right?
Yes, in New York, yes.
Nice.
A nice sunshine day here.
Good. I see a lot of books.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, I see Tanya from the Netherlands, from the transition towns.
Hoe kan ik die camera aandoen? Weet jij dat liever?
Deborah.
Oh, ja.
Hey, Tanya.
Hey, dat is beter.
Welcome.
Gonna put the recording on. So Peter's gonna lead us in constituting ourselves as a group. So Peter?
Okay, so maybe first, let me just say, since lots of you are new
Oh, right.
to the project for integrating spirituality, law, and politics, we are, if you don't know, we are a group of lawyers, law students, and activists who have for many, many years been seeking to build a new movement or expand upon the movement in law to go beyond the conception of law as solely based on individual rights, as it is in the West, as it emphasizes in the West, and instead to seek to build a legal system that fosters empathy and compassion and mutual affirmation, born out of our conviction that we are all connected as human beings. We enter into the grace of each other's presence when we are born, and that the legal system, so to speak, that we need to create should heal what separates us and foster our more fully coming into each other's presence. So High Slap writes articles, holds monthly conference calls like this, has semi-annual conferences, and puts out policy papers sometimes. Now is working with the conscious lawyer, Elaine. I think Elaine may be here somewhere. Elaine puts it out. And so that's who we are. I just wanted to introduce us to you if you are new to this group, and welcome. So glad to have you here. Fantastic. And Femke's been with us for a long time. So as a kind of a member, fellow traveler, both. So we'll come back to that. But for the moment, just let's introduce ourselves very quickly by saying your name and maybe what you see in front of you. What's the surrounding feel of what's in one sentence, because we have lots of you. So I'm Peter Gable, and I'm in my room in San Francisco, California, and there's a beautiful kind of, I'm in an apartment which is scrunched always, but there's a beautiful green tree outside extending itself to me. So I will, next is, it says Mariazza here, but your name is Lola, right? So I'll just go straight down the rows.
Hello, everyone. Yes, my name is Lola. It comes from Maria Dolores. It's the short name. Who has read Nabokov knows that already. He used to explain it in the beginning of Lolita.
And I should have said, say where you are, please.
I'm in Italy, and yeah, I'm in my office, the top floor of my house, and happy to be here. I'm a new face, but I'm not new to this in the sense that I've been following you. I know I've known Femke in in a past life almost, and
thank you.
Happy to be here.
Perfect, thank you. Carolina, if that's how to pronounce your name, or Carolina?
Carolina, perfect. Hi, I'm in Sweden, Stockholm, currently, and I'm looking here at my apartment and looking outside. And you know, in Sweden at this time of the year, it gets dark at like 3. So it's been dark for a long time now. Yes, thank you. Happy to be here.
Okay, thank you. Are you a lawyer or a law-related person?
No, I'm a student currently, a political science student, and I'm having an internship with the parliamentarian Rebecca Lemoine in Sweden.
Great, thank you very much. Jelle? Jelle? Unmute yourself, please. Yes.
My name is Jelle Troelstra. I'm in The Hague, the Netherlands. And it's also very dark outside here. So I'm in my apartment and I'm looking at closed curtains. And I'm a consultant in policy making and often involved also in lawmaking for the government over here.
Thank you. Excellent. Karma Priya.
Hello, I'm Karma Priya. I'm in Stockholm, Sweden. And I'm looking out my window and it's pitch dark, but I'm looking at a hill, a park and a hill, and I see some lights shining through the trees from surrounding buildings. And I'm actually studying right now human rights, and I'm writing my thesis right now. So I'm soon an expert in human rights. So I have a little bit, even if I'm not a lawyer.
Thank you. Excellent. Nanette Shore.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nanette. I'm based in New York City. I'm sitting in my apartment right now where I've been working at home since March. The sunshine is streaming in. It's still light here, although it's very cold. And I work at a organization that represents low-income people in the South Bronx, which is a very poor neighborhood in New York City. So it's great to be with all of you.
Thank you, Nanette. And Nanette and I are co-chairs of PISLAP. Tanya, you have to unmute yourself.
Good evening to all of you. It's evening in the Netherlands, and I'm sitting in Castricum. It's a town close by the sea. I'm in my apartment as well, looking at a table with plants. I have a background in law, did a bachelor on the Free University of Amsterdam, and a lot of master courses as well. I'm mainly interested in international mining and corporate social responsibility. That's where I focused on. And at the moment, I'm very active in the transition movements. Just started in the board of the Dutch National Transition Towns to see if we can help other towns in the Netherlands to get an active group. And don't know if you're familiar with transition towns, but the idea is to work together with people with all kinds of backgrounds to make local initiatives to support the environment and the climate change, just to make sure, support nature as much as possible with a group of people around you on a local level.
Thank you. Thanks very much. Elaine Quinn.
Hi, I'm Elaine Quinn. I'm in Ireland at the moment. It's also very dark, cold, rainy outside, very atmospheric. And I'm the editor of The Conscious Lawyer that Peter mentioned earlier. And it's lovely to see lots of familiar faces on the call. And yeah, it's great, obviously, to have this series, and Femke wrote one of the pieces in the last edition, and I've known Femke for a few years now, so great to be here.
Thank you, Elaine. Bruce Peterson.
Hi, I'm Bruce. I'm a retired judge in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and it's the middle of the afternoon here, and I'm in my home office, and unlike Peter, my tree outside my window is barren of leaves and blowing in the wind. But it's thrilling to see this international group of committed reformers. Thank you.
Bonnie, thank you, Bruce. Bonnie Silvestri.
Hi, I'm Bonnie Silvestri. I'm from Sarasota, Florida. I'm in my makeshift office, which is our family room, but I get to look at fish in my pool. So today's the first day that it's cold. So I'm actually wearing a sweater, and it's really warm here almost all the time. But I'm really interested in climate because we're really kind of at, sea level, or it's very important here. And I work in government, but I've also in the areas of disability and civil rights. I also teach women in the law, and I created a short documentary about family rights. So that's another area of interest of mine, but I'm very excited to hear from Femke. Thank you.
Thank you, Bonnie. Eileen Barker.
Hello, everybody. I am here in California. It's noon. It's almost, I think we could say, sunny. I'm just north of San Francisco in San Rafael. I'm looking at a big redwood tree outside my home, which I feel very lucky to have. It's kind of rare to have one of these giants in your front yard. But I was introduced to Peter and Annette several years ago by Kim Wright, and it's good to see both of you again.
Indeed.
And then I had the great fortune to work with Elaine on Conscious Lawyer, and then to spend time with Femke in the Netherlands, where I, up till the pandemic, was going every year to teach. So it's very near and dear to my heart. And I love her work. I'm so happy to be here with all of you. My passion, I'm a lawyer, but I have a specialty in forgiveness. So my mission, I suppose, has been to take forgiveness out of the realm of something that's taboo, that we can't talk about, to something that we must talk about, because it has to do with healing and bringing us together in the ways that Peter was saying. So that's that's a bit about me, and I'm glad to be here. Thank you.
Thanks, Eileen. Thank you. Good to see you too.
Yes.
Is it Uwe Jacobsen?
Yes, it's Eva Jakobsson. I'm from the south of Sweden, and I'm engaged in the ecocide movement in Sweden, together with Karma Priya, that's also on the call. And I can see nothing out of the pitch black window, but there is a lake. Yeah, thank you very much.
Very good. Thanks so much. Bradley Roth.
Hi there. I'm in New York City, looking at a ring light that I finally caved into buying because my life is now on Zoom, as many of our lives are. And I'm an attorney who's focused mostly on mediation. I chair Mediators Beyond Borders in New York, and I teach a course on mediation and meditation to undergraduate students at a college in New York City. Great to be on the call.
Great to see you again. Yudong.
Hi, everyone. My name is Udom. I'm a junior public policy major at University of Maryland. I'm actually in my classroom right now. So I'm at school on campus right now. Of course, social distance, there's no one around me, not within 6 feet. And basically, I'm really intrigued by the idea of PySlab. And basically, it's very similar to a lot of my own ideals, with regard to making the legal system more humane, more inclusive, right? Not just like, an adversary weapon against people who, are under equipped, in terms of resource. So I think it's a great ideal. And this is my first time here. Great to see everybody.
Welcome. So glad to have you here. Elke van Riel.
Hello, I'm Elke van Riel from Haarlem. It's a town near Amsterdam in the Netherlands. It's dark here. I'm in my working room. I know Femke from an article I have written some years ago about ecocide law. And I'm interested to hear what we'll be talking about tonight.
Thank you. Welcome. Welcome.
Thanks.
Catherine, can't see your last name on the screen. And I also, a number of you don't have your images, your visages visible. So if you can make that happen, that would be great.
Hi, yes, I'm Catherine. I'm based in London. I'm a solicitor. At the moment, I took a break because I have a small child who is 3 years old. And because of the lockdown, it was a bit complicated. And and at the same time, I'm volunteering as a trustee for a company, an NGO that is renewing, I would say, goods. So that's it. Yeah.
Thank you. Thanks. Welcome. Deborah. I only see Deborah by one name. Are you there, Deborah? If you are, please unmute yourself. Okay, we'll come back to you and see if you're there. Lena Meisinger. Lena.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. My name is Lena. I am an international student in the Netherlands. I'm currently in Zwolle, a very small town as well. I'm staring actually at a world map that is in front of me on the opposite side of the room, but outside it's also very dark and very cold. And I'm currently a student studying, it's basically international project management for sustainability, the Windesheim Honors College. And I'm very much interested actually in rights of nature. I would love to combine it with human rights in the future. And I'm very excited to listen to this talk today. And I'm sorry for having my camera switched off. I've been sitting in front of the laptop the whole day today in different meetings, and this is why I thought I would mainly listen. But
you may do just as you wish, but thanks. Great to have you. I guess Anna Larson.
Hello, everyone. I'm Anna Larsson from Sweden, from north of Sweden. It's 9 p.m. here, so it's really dark outside. If I would be able, I would see a forest and high pine trees. I am not a lawyer. I am actually an educated social worker. And I'm here because I see the connection between children's rights, human rights, nature's rights, and the ecocide law. Thank you.
Beautiful, thank you. And I guess Katie, Olivia Van something. So Katie, I'll come back to you if you are able to speak. I think Deborah indicated that her mic was not working or was off, so good to have you anyway. And I think that must be Perry Sedman, who's the 202 phone number.
Yes, that is me. And I wasn't able to join by Zoom because I'm outdoors in Miami Beach, Florida. It's still light here. I'm looking at beautiful palm trees swaying in the wind. And as membership coordinator for PISLAP, I invite each of you to visit our website at spiritlawpolitics.org and check out in more detail what we're all about, and perhaps even join as a member. We have a very easygoing sliding scale, and I invite you to visit and consider it. Thank you.
Thank you, Perry. And I did put that website in the chat line, so you can find it there. It's spiritlawpolitics.org. Anybody else who I might have left out? Who has a mic? Okay, very good. Nanette, I will return it to you.
All right. Thank you so much, Peter, and thank you, everyone. That was wonderful hearing the worlds that you're all a part of. So next, we'd like to turn to Femke, and it sounds like many of you are familiar with Femke, and she's been a longtime member of PISLAP. She's a great lawyer in the ecocide movement and a human rights activist. And without further ado, I'll turn it over to Femke.
Thanks so much, Nanette. Before I start, I would like to ask, do we have to stop at 10 p.m. Amsterdam time or 4 p.m. your time? Because my talk is like half an hour and discussion is very important also. So I might shorten my talk if we have to stop at 10.
No, if it's okay with people, I think we can extend a bit.
Okay, great.
What would be a good time to, I'm getting some yeses for extension, maybe, 4:15, 4:20, something like that, if that's okay.
that would be great. So
okay, great.
Yeah. Okay, so thank you so much, Peter and Annette and Elaine, Quinn, for inviting me to give this presentation. And it's really lovely to see so many familiar faces as well as some new ones. And especially also to see my friends from the Netherlands, but also from Sweden. Stop Ecocide Sweden, it's great to see you represented. So I will talk tonight about positive greedy criminology, which basically wants to address the question how we can become ecologically awake system changers. So let me start by telling you that for me, it's very inspiring to see the legal innovations that creative lawyers have come up with in response to the biodiversity and climate crisis. And I'm particularly excited to see the emerging legal duty of care and how it's used to force governments to take climate action, for example, in the climate litigation cases, especially the Agenda case, of which I am one of the 900 co-litigants, and we won in the Supreme Court. So the Dutch government really has to execute the verdict. But also the Stop Ecocide movement uses the legal duty of care to advocate for criminalizing massive environmental damage and destruction, which we call ecocide. Also, there is support for instituting government bodies to safeguard the rights of future generations. For example, you have the Future Generations Commissioner of Wales, and we're working to have a ombudsperson for future generation in this country, the Netherlands, like there used to be one in Hungary, and in Israel they had a commissioner. And that one is also based on a duty of care for future generations. And I think in my eyes, these developments, they indicate a movement away from the right to exploit natural resources, the right to pollute the environment in order to gain money or earn money, towards a duty of care towards the natural environment. So the movement from exploitation towards caring. Now, if a legal duty of care is implemented, of course, this would happen through the justice system. It would be externally imposed by the justice system, top down, that we are obliged to avoid causing harm to others, human others or non-human others, through environmental destruction or through contributing to climate change through our CO2 emissions. So that would be top down at the level of societal change or macro change. But in our publication, my colleague Anneke van Hoek, who's a criminologist, and me, we wanted to explore if environmentally caring behavior can also come from the inside out, can be intrinsically motivated, a care for environment that is embodied, that comes from inside. Because as the bishops who met in 2019, there were bishops in the Amazon region, spoke, they said that to care for a common home, it requires deep ecological conversion. And they use the Christian term, if we are more mindfully oriented, or maybe if we are Buddhist, we could talk about ecological awakening. And some of us, we simply talk about eco-literacy, to become literate ecologically. So Anneke and I, we used a new framework that we invented. We call it positive green criminology to explore this question. So to research intrinsically motivated care for nature, how can we increase or nurture that? This positive green criminology is related to the fields of positive psychology and positive criminology. As some of you might know, positive psychology studies how human beings can have their best lives, how they can flourish, rather than studying the mental diseases and disorders. So it looks how to increase the positive. And likewise, positive criminology, which is coined by a Dutch criminologist, Mark Schuilenberg, also looks at how we can strengthen positive feelings such as connection and feelings of security and feelings of care and belonging, rather than create safety through fighting crime. It creates safety through strengthening the positive. Well, this really appeals to Anneke and I to look at how can we strengthen the love of nature, the care for nature that people have inside. It might be suppressed, they might be alienated from it. How can we uncover it? How can we nourish it? Because also it gives a lot of positive energy to work on this, because you're really looking at increasing the good vibes, so to say. Now we found insights.
Femke, you may be hitting your mic as you speak, so I'm.
Oh, okay, sorry.
That's all right.
Excuse me. Should I repeat something? Okay, good. Thank you for telling. Yeah. Okay, great. So there are 5 resources or elements that we use to build foundations for this positive green criminology. And I will now shortly speak about each of these 5 elements, and then I'll come back to how can we then connect the personal to the political or the level of individual ecological awakening to system change. The first element is eco-psychology. And I know that my friends from Stop Ecocide Sweden, or Ecocide Sweden, might actually be experts in this field. So I would really love to hear more from them. Eco-psychology was coined in 1992 by Theodore Roszak in his book, The Voice of the Earth. It's a really a great book. I have it here. And it studies the relationship between humans and the natural world through ecological and psychological principles. So it looks to understand how we can expand the emotional connection between individuals and natural world. And one of the assumptions is that individuals have an innate instinct to care about and connect emotionally to nature. And E.O. Wilson calls this biophilia. And eco-psychology tries to uncover this biophilia and to nourish it so that individuals will develop sustainable lifestyles and also overcome the alienation from nature that is so present in our modern or postmodern society. So evidence from research suggests that many polluting activities and damaging behaviors are actually at some level addictive. It might be that it's addictive because it comes from a place of greed, from inner emptiness, fear of not getting enough, fear-based place, because often that's what addiction tries to cover, those kind of feelings that you don't want to go to. So if this is true, if there's an addictive aspect to environmentally damaging behavior, it doesn't, you don't solve it by shaming people. If you shame an addict, it doesn't help with recovery. What helps is empathy, and what helps is positive emotional fulfillment to fill the gap inside. So eco-psychology has developed methods for positive motivation, so to adopt sustainable lifestyles and become reconnected to the earth. And it does so in its practical application, which is called ecotherapy. And some of the methods used in ecotherapy are, for example, outdoor psychotherapy, forest bathing, sounds lovely to me, garden therapy, wilderness therapy, green mindfulness, and being engaged in conservation activities. So these interventions can assist, are supposed to assist in developing embodied care for nature and reconnection. The second element is restorative justice.
Femke, I'm just going to mention once more, there is a sort of a clicking sound when you speak. It's actually fine. I just wanted to comment on it, that if you are accidentally rubbing against anything.
No, I'm not. It's really weird.
It's okay. If you're not, we will just embrace the clicking sound. So no, it's
Sorry.
not a problem. We can understand.
Embrace the sound. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
I'm not, I don't know what that was.
Just keep
so
going.
Because criminology, I will keep going. Criminology looks at the study of crime or to create social safety, security, sourcing itself from psychology, sociology, justice. So restorative justice is also a source for our positive green criminology. I think many of you might be familiar with it, but if not, I will very shortly try to explain something about it. It is a process where the parties who are involved in an offense, they come together in order to collectively, on a voluntary basis, solve the harm that has been caused by the offense, and together look at how can we actually maybe reach, how can we move together into the future, because it will be the offender, it will be the victim and the community that in which this offense has taken place. And it's a question of how can we heal relationships that have been badly harmed. So it's not punishing, but rather it tries to restore that which has been harmed. And because restorative justice emphasizes healing the damaged relationships and going to the roots of the harmful behavior, why did it happen? What does the offender need in order to heal from his or her inner harm that caused him or her to act out? And how can the community assist with this? It is very relational, and that is a good match with environmental harm, because of course the environmental harm is all about relationship. It's about damaging relationship with each other, with Mother Earth, with future generations possibly, even with the atmosphere. And also it has very future oriented, it is quite solution oriented. So we are exploring right now restorative approaches to environmental harms. And in some countries, this is already happening, that they use restorative justice interventions in order to actually remediate some of the harm, such as New Zealand, Australia, Canada, and Brazil. And one of the outcomes of restorative circles or restorative conferences in environmental cases is that the offender apologizes. Forgiveness is really a high, is an ideal outcome of a restorative conference, but it can never be imposed. But it's really about healing and forgiveness, but also physical restoration of environmental harm, which is, of course, what we want to get to, because it really doesn't help to make someone pay a fine. We really want the environment to be restored. Another aspect, another outcome of restorative interventions is environmental training and education of the offender. So try to educate and inform the offender to really not do it again. Community service work, and also audits of activities of the offending company, if we talk about the offender being a company. So really trying to prevent this from happening again, as well as making amends with the community and restoring ecosystems. Now, what is interesting, if you talk about rights of nature, is that in New Zealand and Canada, trees and rivers have been recognized as independent victims of the environmental offense or crime. And as such, they have been represented in indigenous circles, in restorative circles and in restorative conferences mainly by indigenous peoples. And I've talked to Dominic Barter, who is really a pioneer in the work with restorative circles. And he has applied restorative circles to address the huge harm that happened when the river Doce, as is Portuguese, was hugely polluted because mining dam broke, and the toxic mining waste flooded the river, and then the river flooded and destroyed whole territories and cities, causing many deaths and a lot of death of the animal life, and also the river itself was almost dead. So Dominic Barter used restorative circles to de-escalate the huge conflict that existed as a result of this ecocide. And he told me this terrible thing that happened actually helped in the awakening and the realization that this river was a living thing, that we almost killed a living entity, and that it has rights and it should be represented in a restorative circle, and that it has a right to be restored to health as much as possible. So I think that when an offender is confronted with the victims of his harmful behavior, either human or non-human, it can educate the offender about the consequences of his actions. That's one of the purposes of restorative justice, one of the goals. And ideally, if there is a possibility for empathetic listening and for really the victim to be heard, it can lead to ecological growing in consciousness. That is, of course, the most favorable outcome. That's why I think there is promise in the restorative model, because it's not adversarial, but it is coming from a place of connection. So also when an offender engages in conservation work, it can help to reconnect to nature, as we see from inside of ecopsychology. It can foster a sense of belonging and connectedness with the natural world. Now, my third element, there are 5, and I'm at my third right now, is that I found a study from a EU-funded project in 2016. It's called BioMod. And in this project, there were 105 committed actors, committed people who were engaged in nature conservation. And they interviewed these individuals. And what they found is that the importance of eudaimonic values to explain their commitment. So this means expressing the meaningful life. Demonic, but then with EU in front of it. So it sounds scary, but basically it means values connected to what makes life meaningful. So all of these actors who were really committed to nature conservation did so because intrinsically it was meaningful to them. It was connected to a life that makes sense, and it makes a difference in the world. It makes life worth living. And all of the committed actors committed to conservation, to taking care of the environment, they all had intense encounters with nature in their childhood. And it seemed that these childhood nature encounters were really essential for the development of a relationship with nature and for inspiring action for nature later in life. And now a way to connect to nature encounters in childhood is by writing down your green life story or your green biography. This is a method to help you return to childhood experiences of connection and interaction with the earth, and also to see where you have become alienated from the earth in the course of your life, and where you actually have ecological woundedness that can have occurred in the course of your life. So this method of writing a green biography or life story, I think could be very interesting as a tool for eco-psychology, and maybe also as part of eco-literacy coaching that could be done with people who are interested to explore. Anyway, the researchers I just mentioned, one of the recommendations, of course, to policymakers is to ensure that children have access to nature, as we see the huge importance of that. And that could be really done in very practical and simple ways, such as ensuring in the educational curricula that children have enough time to spend in nature and to learn in nature. And with town planning, also that you take that into account. Now, my fourth element is about commoning. I don't know if you are familiar with commoning, but to give a short explanation, commoning is the practice of collaborating and sharing to meet everyday needs and achieve well-being of individuals, communities, and environments. And it takes place outside of the scope of the market and the state. It's really how we took care of our everyday needs before the state and the market took over and colonized us. You can think of community gardens, because the commoning still happen, but you can think of community gardens and of seed sharing, and even of street libraries, because it doesn't have to be ecological. It can be about cultural commoning too. Anyway, a university professor and geographer Neera Singh from the University of Toronto, in her research, she found out that through community-based conservation actions, villagers in India developed affective ties, meaning emotional bonds, with their environment, with the plants, with the trees, with the birds and the animals. So through the action of taking care of the environment, the forests were transformed from nature out there and became part of the self that is nurtured through care. And the deep ecologists call this the ecological self. So the action of commoning actually changed the villagers in how they define their own sense of self. And they became dedicated to be stewards of the forest rather than its owners or its users. So I think this is very insightful and interesting, and I can send more information about commoning and about Neera Singh's work and the work of David Boyer, who is a pioneer, to those who are interested. Now, my fifth point is the value of storytelling and the narrative way of communicating information. Last year, a few years ago, the Yale program on climate change communication found out in a research that sharing personal anecdotes about how the climate crisis changes our lives for the worse can invite people to care, including conservatives. This program had created radio podcasts with featuring Richard Mode, a 60-year-old North Carolinian who enjoys hunting and fishing. Those are, of course, conservatives' hobbies. And in the program, this Richard Mode talks about how he has seen the climate change firsthand and how it has caused the ducks to migrate and the trout to disappear from their old territories. And after listening to this broadcast, the listeners, and most identified as conservatives or moderates, reported they had greater concern about the climate and that they were more accepting of the reality of it and also the human contribution. With other words, it really spoke to their values, and the anecdotes and the emotions expressed by the main character really helped to move them into a place of caring. So this study suggests that storytelling, rather than relying on facts and evidence, can motivate people to care for the environment, even conservatives. Of course, that's a bad thing to say, but also conservatives, also those maybe not at the forefront of the climate justice movement. Now, these 5 elements that I've covered, they give some clues about how can we stimulate intrinsically motivated care for nature. So to stimulate childhood nature experiences, to have restorative interventions in cases of environmental harm, to create narratives that are emotionally moving, that appeal to conservative values, to write our green life stories, to investigate effective commoning, and to look at ecotherapy interventions, we can nourish and enable feelings of belongings and connections to the natural world. And that gives us positive fulfillment and a sense of meaningfulness. And I think as Earthlings, we are wired for a connection with each other and with the earth. So when we overcome our alienation and when we reconnect with the earth and to the earth community, it feels really emotionally fulfilling and profoundly meaningful because it is aligned with our wiring. Well, now at my last part of this conversation, I want to move to the question, how can we then, if we have achieved in a place of embodied care for nature, on the personal level, move to the political level or the level of system change? Because that's also what PICE is about. Here I come to the work of Karen O'Brien from the Oslo University. She's a professor in human geography and sociology. And do you have one moment, please? Sorry, one moment. I'm very sorry, but I had to talk to my child. So back to Professor Karen O'Brien from the Oslo University. She is a professor in human geography and sociology. And she came up with the theory of quantum social change. And for me, that is really the most exciting part of this presentation. She has studied transformative movements that have achieved progressive social change. I'm thinking of the suffragettes. I'm thinking of the abolition of slavery. I'm thinking of the movement for marriage equality. And she found out that there's been so many instances of small groups of individuals who are able to achieve great transformational change because they come from and act from a place of deep and inclusive values. These groups, the suffragettes, the abolitionists, and the others I mentioned, they come from an expanded place of social consciousness. And from that expanded place, they ascribe rights to previously excluded groups. And from there, they work very effectively for social and political change. Of course, when I read this, I have to think about Christopher Stone's essay from 1972, Do Trees Have Standing? Because that's what he talks about, how we can widen our circle of concern and our circle of belonging by giving rights to those who are currently seen as not bearing rights. So the other becomes part of the community. Well, I wonder if this insight about quantum social change could apply to groups with an expanded sense of ecological consciousness, such as those working to make ecocide a crime or give rights to nature. And in their work to ascribe rights to the non-human other. I think that her theory of quantum social change explains why agency can sometimes generate a lot of transformative change, and more importantly, it gives clues to how we can access the same quality of agency in response to the climate and biodiversity crisis. Because I think agency is key right now. It's a key word. So what O'Brien says is that quantum social change means that we are very aware about the beliefs we hold about the future. And if we ground our speech and our actions in universal values, such as Polly Higgins did when she said, first do no harm, with other words, the duty to do no harm, duty of care. She says we generate quantum fractals that replicate these values across bigger, higher levels and scales. So there is not a linear cause and effect going on. There's something else going on. Fractal change, quantum change. Karen O'Brien also said that when we connect to others from a place of interconnectedness, from a place of interbeing, as Thich Nhat Hanh would say, we transcend separation and we are able to access our collective intelligence. So I wonder, when we connect to the earth from an embodied sense of interbeing, are we able to access the intelligence of the earth? I've had the big honor to speak to ecological lawyers and change makers, and this is what they told me. Polly Higgins and Cormac Cullingham, the author of Wildlife, they talk about going in nature and coming back with regenerative ideas. And they say, it is like the time is ripe for these kind of ideas to be enter the psyche of mankind. If we talk about ecopsychology, because the earth is under attack. So it might be the earth generating these kind of regenerative ideas that we need right now. And if we act from these ideas, our actions will be impactful beyond linear logic and help materialize realities that reflect the culture of interbeing. And finally, O'Brien says that the potential for a thriving world exists in every moment, and we can realize the potential by consciously choosing to be the new paradigm. So the more often we come from a place of interbeing, the sooner we will notice transformative change in society. She talks about the fractal of interbeing. I think it sounds very sci-fi and exciting. And I've heard so many stories of meaningful coincidences and synchronicities from ecological change makers. How it seems like a bigger intelligence, maybe the earth herself, was at play and brought people together at the right time and place to help make quantum change possible. Who knows? It's very exciting to think about. So thus, if you are ecologically awake, like we try to achieve on the personal level, when you've become aware of your interconnectedness with the natural world, of which we are an inseparable part, thus it means that also you experience your interbeing with the natural world. That's what this is all about. And then what O'Brien says sounds really promising, because it might be that ecologically awake people coming from an expanded ecological consciousness have more powerful agency when they put their knowledge, expertise, and their heart wisdom in service to system change. And I think that, again, is so important to combine the head and the heart and the left brain and the right brain, because the legal innovations always come from a very creative place, really a combination of left and right brain, in my opinion. Well, my talks with Polly and also with Agenda lawyer Roger Cox, who is the brain behind the climate litigation, and Cormac Cullingham and other earth lawyers affirm this, that they've seen doors opening that were not to be expected if you would think about things, unfolding in a linear way. There seemed to be quite a miraculous quality sometimes. Not to say that they worked very hard and they had to overcome big hurdles, they did. But something bigger seemed to be happening that helped them to carry on. So my question that I end this presentation with is, how can we as integrative lawyers, ecologically concerned citizens, be part of the much needed system change towards a flourishing, ecologically literate civilization within the planetary boundaries? What assists us in harnessing this kind of agency that has the power to move mountains, and how can we assist each other in harnessing this agency? So that's my question for you. I think it is something that would be wonderful to hear what your ideas are about this, and what your ideas are about quantum social change, if you apply it to ecological system change. So thank you very much for listening. And my apologies for the click and the short interruption. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Go ahead, Nanette. I was just going to say the clicking actually stopped. So.
Oh, super.
Femke, thank you so much. That was a wonderful presentation, very thought-provoking. So we just want to open it up now for folks to try to answer Femke's questions for us and challenge to us.
It's very mean of me.
Peter.
Yes, I have an answer, which is, I mean, it's really a question, but it's that we have to bring the spiritual dimension that you speak of, that captures the affective commoning or the coming into awareness or awakening in every way we speak about the issue of climate change and environmental change. That it doesn't mean it's all we have to do. We have to be rational and marshal our arguments and all that. But you know, in the United States, there are probably tens of thousands of environmental programs that students go to, and they study climate change, they study environmental science, they care. But their caring is not what is focused on in how they are taught or in how they are taught to speak about what it is that they want to change. It's the science, it's the analysis of the ozone and the objective dimensions of climate change. So they may become experts, they may, you know, go to work in environmental law firms or in nonprofits, but this dimension that you're emphasizing in this call is different from that. It requires that there be an evocative way of speaking and of bringing into visibility the loss of our connection to nature and the need to restore it and revivify it, bring it back to life. And I wonder if if I could ask you a question, is in Amsterdam or in your work, do you know people that have been successful, for example, in giving public testimony before government agencies, where you begin the talk not by jumping right into the facts of the matter, but rather of trying to evoke in the room as people are listening what it is, the open-heartedness and reconnecting to the surround of nature that you're talking about in this talk?
Well, I immediately have to think about Polly Higgins, and whenever she spoke from such a gentle and wise authority that came from her connection to the earth. And I remember she addressed an audience that was brought together. I think it was by Greenpeace, and there were many corporate people in that room, and in my opinion, there seemed to be quite a lot of people who were quite oriented in maybe business way or very rational people. But I remember how she spoke, and she didn't mince words, and she spoke from ecological and ecocentric perspective. She didn't step it down, and she spoke from such a deep place of wisdom that it changed the whole atmosphere of the room.
Yeah.
And people opened their hearts, and I remember saying something big happens here right now. I was completely impressed by her and her courage. So I have experienced her doing this, and the authority that comes with it really is from another degree. Yeah.
Ah, yes, well put. Yeah. The authority comes from another degree when you do that. And I just say one last thing, comment that's sort of answering a little bit your question, which is when any legal paper you write, anything you write at all about this, the first paragraph, no matter how rational you have to be in the body of the work, the first few paragraphs can evoke the higher meaning and purpose that you're aspiring to, and you can conclude by reconnecting to that, so that all the packaged rationality that within the discourse of our current world has to be there in making an argument there still is space to make this spiritual dimension present if we're conscious about it and do it as a movement, really.
Thank you, Peter.
Other folks should feel free to
I think
just
Bonnie.
speak up.
I think Bonnie says she had a comment and question.
I did. I was just going to say, I feel like I'm always sort of bringing things back to the pandemic, and with the major emphasis on spending time outside, how could we marshal that experience that people are sort of having to be so reliant on the outdoors? Will that awaken a change? And we're kind of in this period of disruption. So how do you see that having an impact going forward on your work?
Well, I think that's a very good point. I've both seen news items about how the pandemic had people go more outside, obviously, is one of the few forms of entertainment, and that it created their appreciation of the natural world, which is very hopeful. But at the same time, I saw also, information and news about actually increased littering in natural places, increased plastic pollution. So it is not a matter of 1, 2, 3, going to the park a little bit more and then becoming ecologically awoke. I think it has a lot to do with unlearning behaviors, overcoming our alienation and decolonizing ourselves, which is another topic. But that's a very profound process, and it can also be very painful if you see how strange we have become from nature and our own inner nature. Yeah.
See, Tanja, sorry, I just have to have, I'm not the moderator here. I just noticed that Tanja is raising her hand, sorry.
Hi.
Thank you.
Yes, please.
Thank you for your talk, Femke, and thanks everybody for their what they're bringing. I have to admit, sometimes I'm searching a bit for words because I just had a meeting in Dutch, so I have to switch. But what I noticed also about what Bonnie says, hey, you see that people go more outside in this time, but also some people go outside and they make still this pollution. And I think this has to do with some intrinsic value, this real connection you feel with the earth and how you handle. And I think this real connection, which we can hopefully inspire people to make, is also what changes your language and the way you speak. Like Peter said, this language is very important to bring a message and to make change. And I guess this language comes from this connection, but also from a vision. If you have this connection with the earth, you have a real vision, and that's the difference with, I think what Peter says is people who are studying in the field of environmental protection, and somehow they can't bring the message because they only use the research, only the brain. And then I think what kind of persons really made an impact on me, that what the persons who were connected with the earth and they had this real strong vision. So you have these people with a vision, and also from there the language, which brings the message. But we need a lot of people with this. And I think for us, how can you create this or help people to find this way of speaking and this way of bringing a message, is you need space. I guess what those people did, they went into nature, they took the space and the time to connect, to make these real connections. I think an ingredient would be space, and besides that, also support networks to build it together. So I think these are a few important ingredients. And another ingredient is if we want the political system to change, I think we need to give them a lot of alternatives. Comes from this creative place, which you can access because you made this connection with the earth.
Yeah.
Because not everybody has found a way yet. So you need to give them their thinking and what they know. So together we can make we have this vision, we make a network, and we bring all these alternatives to them. They get used to it more and more, and hopefully we get them stuck in the system, this new way of thinking. And I think Stop Ecocide is doing really well in this, bringing a completely different alternative from the heart. And you see that it's picking up. You see also in the European Parliament is coming this discussion, and some Dutch parties are putting it in their programs. So I think they are a good example of using these ingredients to make a real system change.
Wow, that's super eloquent and beautiful, Tanya. Thank you so much. And I really like what Arcady, who is the director of Stop Ecocide Netherlands, she's on the call. She says, the more people get on board who endorse ecocide law, the more other people will feel safe that it's an okay thing to also advocate and endorse. So we create safety for people psychologically by having experts, lawyers, TV personalities, a princess from Belgium, and many others join and endorse us. And I think that really says a lot about the emotional and psychological aspects of change.
Thank you. Femke, Yudong had a question for you. Go ahead, Yudong.
Okay.
Hi, can people still hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. So yeah, I just want to say, because this is my first time ever attending a Zoom webinar by you guys, and it's actually very surprising for me because I was basically working on subjects related to how to create a more meaningful society, right, in an economic perspective. So you know, there's a lot of articles written about how we have transformed, you know, into a service-oriented and experience-oriented and now meaning-oriented market. But nobody know what that means because you know, economy by itself, right, it's going to be dependent on the larger structure that is the political climate that is largely, you know, guaranteed by the legal system that we have in place, right? We have to change the way people perceive society as a whole in order to, you know, change their decision making in the market and everything else. So I feel like this is a very unique angle that we are really like going around. And it's very surprising for me that I have found this group, and you know, it's just amazing how PySlab is so visionary in my view. You know, it's a very frontier area, but you know, it's founded in 1990s. So that was something that, you know, that really shocked me. Really, I came across this website literally last night because I was reading Dr. Lerner's book, which is called, I believe, Politics of Meaning and the how to restore hopes and everything. And he mentioned this, how legal professionals, a team of legal professionals are discussing this. And I basically just picked up a couple of keywords that is, you know, okay, lawyer, and also how to make it more spiritual oriented. And then this is the first website that I came across. And actually it talked about Dr. Lerner's work on the website. So it just all came together, and I felt really surprised, you know, about how people are waking up like holistically to what's going on, not just, you know, addressing specific economic problems. Because as long as we stay at the level of just economics, then everything's going to come down to, okay, so who's going to be, you know, the supply and demand side of things. And that's just not very helpful because human beings are, you know, spiritual beings. We're not just supply and demand. So I think it's time for us to move on from it. And I just thank everybody so much for gathering here and, you know, sharing all these very valuable viewpoints. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Wonderful.
Thank you. Other folks?
Just briefly, I was inspired to hear about the Ecuadorian constitution. I don't know if others have followed, recognizing the rights of nature itself, and there have been lawsuits based on that. And I just wonder, whether, you know, what kind of creative impulse that came from, whether it was the type that you're describing or whether it was something a little bit more of a different ilk or approach.
I can say something about that Cormac Cullinan, who wrote Wild Law, he was involved with advising the Constitutional Assembly of Ecuador about how to put the rights of nature in the Constitution, but really they were working also with the Community Environmental Law Defense Fund from the US with Mari Margill. because that foundation is super active in assisting countries with implementing rights of nature in their laws and in their policy. So it was a coming together of South African Cormac and the Mari Margil, working with Ecuadorians who resonated with the idea of rights of nature and of the intrinsic worth of nature, mainly also coming from indigenous communities. So it was really a combination of working, forming alliances and having people who wanted to endorse it in the Constitutional Assembly. But this is also something that has been criticized a lot if you look at the beautiful constitutional provision about rights of nature and the reality of the continued exploitation of the environment in the Amazon in Ecuador, and giving concessions to the Chinese to deforest in exchange for financial help. So you see that's basically, this sparked also my search for, you can have a beautiful provision in your constitution, but if it is in a system that is, caught in a neoliberal economy, in a system of exploitation, how are we gonna make it work? Like, how does it not become a paper tiger, I think you guys call it, dode letter van de wet. How does it become embodied in the hearts and minds of people, especially those in power? So that is a very interesting question, and it's always good to keep an eye on the social and economical realities and context in which we promote these kind of provisions, because sometimes even rights of nature is used in Bolivia, for example, to say this means that it's our sovereign right to use our nature as we wish as a nation. So they use the rights of nature for their rhetoric, the populist rhetoric, and the rhetoric of energy sovereignty. But there's a lot of research on this. So,
if I could add a comment to that, so this increases the importance of the spiritual dimension of our discourse, because law itself as a rational system is manipulable. In the Ecuador context, the decision to allow the continued destruction of the Amazon is obviously required in this case. I know the decision that the president or the legislature made was based on a lot of pressure on the economy that led them to sort of crack and agree to do that. But it led them to interpret the rights of nature in a way consistent with, in other words, they could manipulate what was actually had been fought to be put in the Constitution in a way that still permitted this destruction. And so I think we can't rely on reason. We can't rely just on the legal provision. It has to be supported by this higher consciousness that gives meaning to that provision. And that's what you are really addressing with positive green criminology, or these eco-psychology elements.
Yeah, absolutely. Tanya.
I think Maria has her hand up for quite a while, actually. Sorry, I can just see you there.
See you, Maria.
I can wait.
Sorry, Maria.
I think you're muted. You're muted, Maria. You have to unmute yourself.
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry. Okay, so I just wanted to make a comment. Thanks for your presentation, your discussion. I think it was interesting, and I feel quite connected with all what you said. I've been doing a lot of research on these topics for a long time, and going into the more spiritual line of the discourse, I'm actually thinking that you started with biophilia and all this almost spiritual connection, psychological connection to nature. But then you come back to restorative justice concepts, and then you go to quantum transformation. You ended up with this. And don't you think that the connecting point is education, also in the spiritual level? I mean, it all departs from that. I've been devoting the last 3 years to this, from departing from my rational and legal background to becoming theories and new theories of transformative law movement, because actually there is no lawyers talking on the theoretical level of transformation. There are economists, a lot of economists in the sustainability field, geographists, and all the transition movement is actually has been polluted, if you want to call it, of this spiritual sort of awakening. We have to become interdisciplinary and connect. And then as lawyers, we have to transform the system, and we have to start from education. I think the Earth Charter was actually an incredible momentum for natural justice. And then we have almost arrived to an incredible momentum with the Global Pact, and they all talk about education. They all include an important article about education, but we lawyers are still sleeping about this, and we are not transforming anything. We are not transforming our educational systems. I've been actually working on a storytelling project, also introduced by economists, and I was inspired by the ecology of law of Capra, and which is always common in and Matei. I actually made a review of his book for lawyers, because it's incredible that administrative lawyers that are working on this don't know most of the common in theories. I mean, you talk about Boyle, but it's not even the most inspiring people for lawyers, because if you read ecology of law, you know how you can actually work as a lawyer connected with your spiritual line, if you want to call it like this, and transform. So we need to believe that we are transformers, and that's the change we need to make. And so I devoted, as I told you, 3 years working on education, and I intend to work on this line. I cannot work anymore actually with administrative lawyers. I left my my job as a teacher in the department, as you know, recently, and I'm really now I'm thinking how to transform my professional life to devote it to this, because it's very important. So I wanted to know your thoughts about this. I mean, because it's the key is in education and spirituality.
Mm-hmm.
And as lawyers, we have to lose our fears to talk about this.
Yeah, absolutely.
Really, we need that, even at constitutional level, at administrative and institutional level. That's what we need. It's the only leap that we. Robert Unger, actually started to say that the good lawyer is the one that goes and transforms. You know, this is okay. That's to call it.
No. We should be transformative lawyers. I agree, and I think.
And it's only lawyers that are missing in this movement, and it's only lawyers that are missing.
I see lawyers. I see lawyers in this movement who do transformative work and who educate. Lawyers are not lawyers from a place of, ecological wokeness. Also teaching about this in universities and assisting the students in writing their thesis. There has been a huge influx of students who want to write theses on ecocide, law and rights of nature.
Yeah.
You might know about the UN Harmony with Nature network that is gathering also ecocentric lawyers to educate the General Assembly about what's happening in these fields around the world. So I do see lawyers involved in ecological education, but of course we really need more of us. But like Kim Wright, who's also my dear friend and big source of inspiration, says, community gives courage. It asks courage of us to speak from the heart, right? And to speak even more about a certain spirituality or sense of connectedness. Sometimes for me, it also almost feels like I'm coming out of the closet when I do that, certainly in the past.
Yeah.
So how do we encourage each other to speak from that place? Because it doesn't mean that you become irrational, but it does mean that you also use the heart intelligence and that you use your intuition. You use a bigger intelligence in addition to your analytical skills. So it's not like you become woo-hoo off on a pink cloud. It's actually you bring to the table more. But it really requires courage. And I'm thinking of Aileen Barker's work with forgiveness also, because for me, she's really someone who integrates the both aspects in her work.
Yeah, but Femke, I was actually talking not only educating lawyers, educating educative institutions, changing the education system.
Yeah.
And lawyers are not doing that. Our education systems are stuck. They are all stuck at the same line. I mean, of course, it's easier to educate lawyers in countries like the Netherlands, but still in Spain, you are out of the row if you start talking about spiritual law. And I mean, I started my course on storytelling and law, and the other professors were saying, okay, it's Lola, it's exotic. I mean, it's like,
yes.
And well,
Lola, I think that you could
only they started to listen when I started to think about how to introduce certain type of courses and certain type of education in the education system, how to change our education system at administrative level. Then they listen to that. But I mean, it's still not easy, at least in my country and in Italy. I have experiences in other countries because I did my law degree in Great Britain, but I know it's easier there as well as in the Netherlands. But so there are still some constrictions in some Mediterranean countries, unfortunately. But yeah, well, sorry, been too long.
No, thanks. I think you can enlighten us more about this maybe in another meeting. Lola.
Yeah.
We'd like to hear more about your work.
Oh, I was muted. I was just going to jump in and say that I think, you know, as we've been discussing that, you know, and I think this is very core to PISLAP, that a critical aspect of lawyering is transformation of consciousness and the knowledge, the deep knowledge of how that's to be done, as you laid out, Femke. So I think, you know, it's not just us talking about spirituality and including it in our own work, but also sort of fostering the idea that being a lawyer is also, that this is an important aspect of our work. And I was thinking also about the divide between ecological consciousness and people who are very committed to human rights. And there is a real divide. And I think, you know, the approach that you map out here, I think creates a path for those two to come together in a much more powerful way. So a lot more to say about that, I'm sure, but I don't know if you have one or two quick thoughts before we wrap up.
Well, what is hope giving to me is to see how the UN repertoire on human rights and the environment is really bridging the gap between human rights and the environment. And, you know, that pollution of the environment is a human rights violation is an argument that becomes more and more heard and more mainstream. So I see more of that coming together, especially in the context of climate litigation. So yeah, that's what I can say to that. Can I just ask a question also to the audience, because what I've experienced is that when I connected to these ideas of rights of nature and ecocide law, that for me are very regenerative ideas, that it seemed to really make my life much more miraculous, that it opened doors in ways that were really out of the ordinary. And it was like the vibration or the energy of the idea made my life also vibrate on a level of more opportunity and access to people in places that I could not have dreamed to have access to. And for me, that it came from the idea itself that I joined with. So I've heard this kind of thing also from colleagues in the Stop Ecocide movement, maybe even mostly from Valérie from France, Valérie Cabanet, who started out some years ago and actually met the Pope this year to advocate ecocide law. And of course, President Macron is now speaking out that he wants to endorse ecocide law internationally, and it's largely thanks to her work. And she told me that this, for her, this magical thing, you know, it's not magical, but this unexpected thing of doors opening to very high places. And I just wondered if others in this call have experienced something similar when you connect to a regenerative idea as restorative justice or mindful lawyering or forgiveness or any other similar idea.
I can totally agree with that. And I think it has to do with that we are also working for something. Like we are really working hard for a solution to make this world a better place for all of us. And most of us comes from the environmental activist background, and in that you are like 99% working against things, and that is a much more heavy energy to be in. And sometimes that is of course necessary, because Greenpeace are chaining themselves in the, you know, in the last minute before the bulldozers are moving in, and it's important, but you can't be in that energy and stay healthy for very long periods of time. And when I moved into the ecocide movement, it was like, yes, now finally I can put my energy in something positive and moving forward. And I think that energy is felt also in everyone around, like, and with the people that you meet, because you are met with really good energy. Like everyone is like, oh, it's such a good idea. Like, yeah.
Thank you. Yeah.
Femke, I think, and everyone, I think we probably need to wrap up. I know some folks have other commitments, and we also, I think the Zoom will shut down in a couple of moments because I set it for an hour and a half. So I don't know if you had any last comment or if anyone else had one last thought before we say goodbye for today. That was a wonderful note to end on.
I have one last thought. It's actually interesting because it just occurred to me, you know, most people in this webinar are already, you know, working professionals, but actually there's way more young people, specifically Generation Z, right, as we call it, that has shown this almost precocious need, like this longing for meaning and spirituality in their lives than ever before. And this is actually a very interesting thing that I think, you know, is already, it seems to me the age of reason, right, pure rationality, is being gradually replaced by an age of meaning, right, this romanticist spiritual perspective of things. And one very unfortunate phenomenon going on right now is, you know, politicians, they're used to using morality and, you know, spirituality as talking points to appeal to their constituency, but it's actually, you know, basically getting the entire society upside down if we're trying to reach where we want to be. So yeah, that's just my closing thought.
Thank you, Udon.
Thank you. Join us, Udon. We tag you. You're it.
Thank you so much. I actually just joined. I just paid the $5 because I'm a pre-law student. So yeah, hopefully we will match, you know, cross more paths in the future. Thank you guys so much.
Yeah, Femke, I want to thank you so much for those really deep and wonderful talk. We did record it. We're going to share it, and so appreciate your thoughts and your activism and your vision. So, and thank you everyone for joining from all over the world, from different times of the day, and we're much appreciative of this great dialogue.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. It was a great pleasure. Thank you so much.
Bye.